Okay, so good morning, everyone. Sorry, so used to saying these good mornings. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Is the audio video screen share working fine? Perfect. Thank you very much. And good to see so many familiar names. I've seen so many of you in the sessions, and now to see you here in this webinar, it's definitely a great feeling. So thank you very much for all you have joined. Abdul Rahim, I think. Can you just check the volume on your end, because everyone else is able to hear. So maybe there is some issue with the volume at your end. Can you just please check that? Because everyone else, I think, is able to hear and also see the video and the screen share. I mean, the screen is also visible, I guess. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, it's 7 o'clock. We'll just wait for probably a minute more and then we can start. Okay, it's 7:01 anyways. We'll just wait for a minute more and then we can start. I can already see around, yeah, quite a few of you who have already joined. I can see around at least 10 of y'all we've already met in the classes. In addition to that, I can see quite a few new names also. So great to have you all here. Okay, yeah, I think we can now begin the discussion. Now, I'll just give you a bit of background, again, a very candid background about why we are discussing all these things and what led to this presentation that we are having today. Okay, so it all started with few discussions that we had close to a year back in general about the numbers, right? How exactly the certification market is growing. Now, there are a lot of finance certifications that you would know. So there is CFA, which is more on the financial analysis, investment research, equity research side. Then there is FRM, which is more on the risk side. There is CMA, which is more on the management accountant side, or it's again a mix of both ACCA and CFA. Then there is ACCA, which is a very well-known certification when it comes to accounting. So these are few certifications that we all were having discussion about, and the discussion on FRM came up. 1 second, yeah. And then that is how the discussion on FRM came up. And we were just looking at the numbers, okay? And that is where this entire discussion started. So let me just give you a brief overview of, in general, what is the growth that we've been seeing for this certification and in general the demand. And then, although see, as an analyst, see, I've always been an analyst. I always start with data, and then from the data you need to ask the right questions. Okay, so now if you see, in general, this is the number of CFA candidates over the last 5 years and the number of FRM candidates over the last 5 years. Okay, so in 2017 there were around 270,000 CFA candidates, right? Kept growing to around 354. This is the peak that CFA has reached, 354,000 CFA candidates in a year in 2019. Then all of a sudden you had COVID. Now this was very much expected. Everyone knew that this problem is going to happen now, and this was true for any certification. From here, if you see, the demand has to some extent bounced back, but yeah, we still see that it has not touched the 2019 numbers, or in fact even not 2017, right? And we expected that almost all certifications will have a similar trajectory, as in the number of students appearing for it. Okay, And when we looked at FRM, right, again, these data is from GAR, just like CFA, there is FRM, and FRM numbers are basically provided by the GAR Institute. So we saw that in 2017, around 57,000 gave it, then 68, 81, it kind of fell down to 71,000. Now this was COVID, okay? Now what surprised all of us here at Kaplan was, even in such a bad year in 2020, the demand for this exam hardly fell, as in just 10,000 students lesser. And from here, there was again a major pullback. And right now we are at the peak, right? 2022 numbers are still yet to come out. Even 2021 numbers have not, exact numbers have not come out, but they have mentioned about the growth, how much growth they have seen. So if you see here, in general, what we saw is that demand for CFA in general, number of students appearing had fallen down a bit, and not the case for FRM. And we tried to evaluate and see again, it's not about quickly making a decision that, okay, yeah, there is something wrong. No. Now with CFA, what happened is, one, there was a headwind because of exam not being conducted in different markets. Now the biggest market for CFA is US, China, and India. Now most of these markets faced issues with respect to getting and being able to conduct being able to conduct the exam, right? So exams were not administered in many of these countries, and again in 2021 there were some major markets that got affected. So we definitely see that things are improving. It has literally doubled for CFA from 2020 to 2021, and things would improve further. But yeah, with FRM, we realized that the same headwinds, right, the same issues were there. Biggest market, but what we saw here is the demand didn't fall as much as CFA. Now, one reason was because the way they conducted the exam, there are only 2 levels easier. And the second reason was, in general, there was a tailwind in the form of more demand for the exam. Now, this is where our research started, as in why is there in general a higher demand for FRM these days. Okay. Now, with this, we begin our discussion. I'll just tell you about what this certification is about, the kind of roles that people are working in, and in general, the demand that we see here. Okay. Like always, whenever you all have any questions, you all can directly ask. The chat box is available. In case you all have a question which you all really don't want to type in, you all can just unmute yourself and ask. And might be 30 minutes or 35 minutes of interaction from my end, and remaining maybe the last second half, or maybe the second 30% of the session can be dictated by you. Any questions you all have, I'll be more than happy to answer. Okay. Basel regulations. Now see, risk management is a very, very broad field, right? Manufacturing companies use risk management, right? Software companies use risk management, banks use risk management. But this FRM, when we are saying financial risk, so remember the first word here is financial, right? So the purpose of this entire certification is to a very niche audience working towards financial risk management. Now this is something that is very much used in banks, banking institutions, insurance companies, and other asset management companies, but most importantly, banks. And the single biggest reason why there was a demand increase for FRM is because of the Basel regulations. And if you see the numbers, all these things picked up after 2011, right, 2011. Now, because the Basel III started coming in after the 2008 global financial crisis, the BCBS, the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision, came up with Basel III, came into full force somewhere in 2014 or so, but then things had started somewhere in 2010-11. And this is where banks realized the need for, one, measuring all these risks, that is market risk, credit risk, operational risk, credit value adjustments. So all these risks they had to measure, and they also realized that they have to manage. And all those individual central banks, like for example, we have the Central Bank of UAE, US Fed, all of them started imposing requirements on these member banks, because of which there were different kind of reports they had to prepare. There were different kind of analysis that they had to do. And this is where the entire demand for risk management and measurement started. And this was a region, or this was an area which was not catered by the other institutes like the CFA Institute and let's say the ACCA or the ICMA, right, or the ones which governs the CMA. Now this is where GARP, which was already an old institute, found its demand, right, and that is where it all started. The second very important factor that has kind of contributed to this growth is modeling. Now see, 30 years back, if I had asked you about credit risk, right, you would have said, okay, credit risk means I give loan to a person and or loan to a company, and what if the company defaults? Okay. Now, how do you measure or evaluate credit risk? It was all about learning or understanding financial statements. Okay, because you are lending money to an institution, they give their financial statements to you, you understand it. There was nothing related to credit risk modeling because there was not huge amount of data to actually model and analyze. Today, credit risk is not evaluated as an individual basis, right? We've created models, right? So entire the credit risk part is based on models today, right? There are thousands of loan applications, or maybe hundred, maybe a million of loan applications that come to you. You cannot sit and evaluate every person. Okay, yes, corporate lending, a big loan, yes, you can evaluate. Structured finance, yes, you can. But when it comes to individual small size loans, you can sit and evaluate everything, right? Now this is where models came into picture, and there was huge amount of data over the last few decades. There's a lot of data that has been created by S&P, Moody's, Fitch. Now all these credit rating agencies came together, started sharing data based on which we tried to understand, or we started understanding probability of default, loss given default. Now these terms were unheard of few decades back. Now we are not talking about measuring individual bonds credit risk, but we are talking about measuring what is the probability of default for AA rated bonds based on last 30 years of history, right? So these kind of analysis started being done in the industry, and that was not true only for credit risk, but also for market risk and operational risk. And this is where in general you would see FRM certified students or candidates working. Let me just quickly give you an idea about the roles that gets opened up after you clear the FRM. Okay, and so just to again summarize the real reason behind the increase in demand: one, the regulation; second, the ability to model risk. Earlier, risks were looked individually. Today, you can model them, right? And this is where quant came into picture. That is why in FRM, you're going to learn a lot about, again, machine learning is discussed, quantitative models are discussed. Okay. Now, if you see what are some areas where uh, credit or in general risk managers work, just like the different types of risk, your managers, risk managers, they work based on the type of risk that bank is exposed to. So there are credit risk managers. Again, most of these are taken from the GARP websites itself. So credit risk manager in general tries to evaluate credit outcomes. They try to see, is, again, it's not about individual. Let me tell you, these are not underwriters. Although a risk manager can work as an underwriter, credit risk manager is definitely a more holistic view about credit risk faced by a bank, right? How do you quantify the risk? What is the probability of default? What is the loss given default? In general, how do you model? When can the risk be high? When can the risk be low? Based on this, do I need to take collateral from these set of borrowers? Do I need to have collateral from next set of borrowers? So all these kind of analysis is done by credit risk managers, right? A major uh, major uh, institution that require credit risk managers are banks. Second, what you would also see a lot of people working towards is market risk. Now, banks, they also have a trading book, just like they have a banking book. That is, they have a liability coming from deposits, which they lend out. At the same time, they also invest. Okay, so they also maintain a trading book. Now, trading book is exposed to market risks. It prices could go up, prices could go down, and the prices going down can wipe off the equity of a bank, right? And this is where demand for market risk managers emerge. Now, market risk managers not just in banks, but also in asset management companies, also with insurance. Credit risk is mainly on the banks. Market risk managers are working in insurance companies, in banks and asset managers, right? Or asset management companies, your AMCs. Now, what do they do? First, they need to evaluate the kind of risks that the funds are exposed to. Right now, how you measure these risks? VAR is a very important measure. Then there are other variations of VAR, right? But other than that, they look at probability of market values falling beyond a particular level. In general, they look at standard deviations, right? So all these are when market risk managers comes in, and there's a lot of report requirement these days, right? There are a lot of weekly reports that central banks need, quarterly reports. You need to talk about the risk that you're faced in your trading. So all these things is where market risk managers have come into picture. And then there are operational risk managers. Now, operational risk again is another risk which has been identified by Basel Committee, right? So these risks that I'm talking about is not something that GARP has defined. It is not something that Kaplan has defined. It is being defined by the Basel Committee, right? So operational risk is, again, as you would know, risks arising because of people, processes, systems, external factors. Now there are huge amount of reporting requirements for this, right? Now you need to individually evaluate the revenue from different lines of businesses that you have. Okay, based on that, assign a risk weight. That is where your RWA concepts come into picture. Based on these, banks have to maintain tier 1, tier capital, right? Based on these, you have to maintain a CAR or a capital adequacy ratio. So this is where, again, all your risk managers are being demanded by the industry. And the last few years, as you see, the demand has only gone up. And FRM is the only certification that is there available in the market catering this segment for the financial industry. You go to a MBA program, you might have one 30-hour credit course, or maybe even that might not be there, right? Or in case it is there, yeah, maybe one 30-hour course on risk management, which will just give you a simple overview about what is the risk, what are the different types of risk, how do you measure it, right? But if you see, there's just one exam well known. There's also PRM, which has very similar curriculum compared to FRM. But yeah, FRM is definitely has that brand advantage. So the only certification that is in a well-established way catering to the risk management demands of the industry. Clear? So that's about, in general, the demand for risk managers. Next, talking about FRM. So FRM, again, I don't really want to give you complicated words and explanations. In simple words, it is just an institute, which is GARP, Global Association of Risk Professionals. Just like you have the CFA Institute, this institute has different exams. There is the FRM exam, the SCR exams, the climate risk exam, of which the flagship program is the FRM. Okay. Now, just a quick question. Now, Abdul has asked, what could be a collateral that I can take from a company that I'm investing in? Again, a very specific one. But yeah, and by the way, my name is Shanin. The name of the organization is Kaplan. But anyways, yeah. See, now if you are investing in equity, that is, you're investing in shares of a company, there is absolutely no collateral that you are going to have. If you are investing in the debt, that is, you're giving loan to the company, it could be secured or unsecured. If it's unsecured, there is no collateral. If it is secured, now what could be collateral? The most widely used collaterals are land, buildings. In addition to that, you can have inventory. So you need to create a lien against it so that the company doesn't liquidate those assets. Okay, so these are some collateral that you could have. In addition to that, you definitely can also have the shares of those companies as collateral. But yeah, the most widely used one is land, buildings, inventory. Okay, yeah. Now, talking about the exam, so it's administered by the GAR. This is the flagship program. There are two levels. There is part 1 and part 2. Right, so let me just talk about in general, how does it work? So you first need to enroll for the exam. There is no educational or professional qualifications required. So do you need to have graduation, post-grad, or do you have to clear your schools? No qualification requirements at all. You've not studied in school at all, you are also allowed to give the FRM, but you're just allowed to give the FRM exam. You don't become a FRM charter holder. Now, to become a charter holder, there are two exams, part 1 and part 2 exam. I'll tell you exactly the curriculum of these exams, what do you study, and I'll also give you a document for this. Now, part 1 exam is conducted in May, August, November. Part 2 is conducted in May and November. Now, you could give part 1 and part 2 both on a single day also. Okay, so let's say if today you decide you want to give the exam, you could just give, and the earliest that you could do is maybe November 2022. You could give part 1 and part 2. In one single day, you become FRM charter holder once you clear and you have the relevant experience. But here there are some requirements. One, imagine in November 2022, you give the exam, and if you don't clear part 1, but you clear part 2, it won't be treated as you've cleared part 2, right? So you have to clear both part 1 and part 2. Okay, just clearing part 2 and not clearing part 1 is not enough. Okay, it will just assume that you have failed part 2, and if you clear part 1 and you don't clear part 2, that's fine. It will be seen that you've cleared part 1. Okay, so this is still like a level. You cannot clear level 2 without clearing level 1. So you need to clear both. You could clear them simultaneously also. Okay, now this is completely multiple choice. There is no calculations as such. There is no essay questions as such. So these are 4-hour exams. Part 1 has 100 multiple choice questions. Part 2 has 80 multiple choice questions. Okay, there's a morning session and there is a afternoon session, right? Again, these questions require more time, and that is why you have kind of, it's a 4-hour kind of, it's a longer exam, and that's basically how you would see it. Again, there's a morning session, afternoon session for both these exams. You get the results within 6 weeks. Again, this is slightly faster. So within 1.5 months, you get the result. Passing scores are determined by the FRM committee. So in the results also, what you would see is where you stand. Okay, so imagine that in fact the results would see something like this, and where you are. Now, if you are here in this range, you definitely failed. If you are in this range, you will definitely clear. So they will divide you into 4 ranges: the bottom 25, top 25, or in between. Clear? Based on this, in general, they try to decide whether you clear or not. Now, I have a question here from Zoya. Can you give part 2 before part 1 if you're not doing them? No, you cannot give part 2 before part 1. The idea is you can clear part 2 only if you have cleared part 1. So even if you give both of them together, first your part 1 is going to be tested or is going to be checked. If you clear part 1, only then your part 2 exam is going to be checked. If you not clear part 1, doesn't matter whether you have cleared part 2 or not. Okay, Abdullah, is it mandatory to clear part 2 in certain time? Otherwise, yes. Very good. Good question. It has to be cleared in 4 calendar years or 4 years, which means, let me give you an example, which means If you clear part 1 in November 2022, okay, 4 years more, that is 2026, you need to clear the exam before November 2026. That is the last exam of 2026. You cannot give your part 2 in 2027. Okay, so yeah, the part 1 is valid only for 4 years. Then Tabit, how much time do you need to prepare for part 1 and part 2? Again, yeah, Tabit, good to see your question. Now I know you, if you've interacted in the class, so because you have already studied for CFA, what I could say is part 1 would hardly require any time. Maybe see, our courses that we do at Kaplan is around 80 hours. In addition to that, 50 more hours would be enough to clear part 1. Part 2 might again require 100 hours or so. So this would require to kind of give you an approximation, half of what it would require for CFA in terms of the number of hours, assuming that you've already studied for CFA, because there are some common areas. Okay, are there any prerequisites needed to do an FRM? See, Gayatri, from an institution level, there's no prerequisites required to enroll for the exam, but to really understand the concept, basic quantitative methods you need to know, right? So you need to have studied math, maybe in your undergrad or in your school. You should have liked maths. If you don't really like maths, you might not like the curriculum, right? Because there is focus on quantitative methods in this exam. Okay, is it equivalent to CFA? Yes, it is equivalent to CFA, but not the same as CFA. The CFA certification is catering to a different requirement of the industry. The industry requires people who are good in with equity research, good at managing funds. That is where the CFA Institute is trying to certify people, right? Similarly, banks, they need uh, risk managers, okay, and this is where FRM is trying to cater the industry. So it's equivalent, and then from a industry perspective, yes, these two are certifications that you require, or that can help you do better in your job, but then yeah, they're not exactly the same. Now, Abdullah, when Kaplan part 1 preparation starts? Yeah, so we are starting the part 1 preparations in the first week of August, and then there is another batch starting. This is for the November attempt. Okay, for the November 2022 attempt, we are starting one in the first week of August, and after that we are going to start the other one, a merger batch, towards the end of August. Okay, so to all of you, there will be a schedule also that will be sent. Okay, now Mohammed, what's the percentage of people that cleared part 1 at Kaplan? Yeah, now here Kaplan, in the past we never explored FRM as a certification. In 2017 we had done, but then the demand for FRM at that time in the region in UAE was slightly lower. Of late, in the last 2 years post COVID, we have seen the demand, and that is where we have launched FRM. So we have not done FRM in the region in the last 2 years. Okay, but all our trainers are kind of people who have cleared the FRM exam, and they are well versed with the curriculum. Right? But then we really don't have numbers to talk about in the B2C batches. In the corporate, yes, in the corporate we are doing. So there are few very big firms in Saudi for whom we are doing FRM certification. Okay, yeah, and once you clear part 1 and part 2, right, you need to, so sorry, you need to have 2 years of relevant work experience. Now this relevant work experience needs to be some way or the other related to investments, research, risk. So it's again, requirements are broad here. Something that can give you a CFA charter will also give you an FRM charter. In addition to that, if you have a focus on risk management, that would be even more helpful. Okay, now what are the areas in the FRM exam? So part 1 right? There are 4 topics. No, Abdul, you don't need 2 years of work experience. First, to enroll for the exam, you don't have any requirement. But to earn the FRM charter holder, so if you want to say Abdul Rahim, FRM, that is where you need to have 2 years of relevant work experience. Yeah. How is the pass rates globally? The pass rates globally are slightly above 50%. So yeah, somewhere in the range of 50%. Again, part 2 has a slightly higher rate, close to 60%. Part 1 has a rate of 50%. So this is an exam. The benefit is can be get done quickly. Okay. But let me tell you, do not get deceived by the higher pass rates, because FRM is an exam that slightly more experienced people give. CFA is an exam where you would see even a 20-year-old young student after might have studied engineering and they come to give the exam. FRM is someone who has some idea about the finance industry and all. They are the ones who are giving the exam. So 50% pass rate is definitely challenging. Okay. Now, Gauri, what happens if you clear the exams but don't receive charter within 4 years? No, absolutely no. You can clear the exam and then you can receive the charter after 2 decades. That doesn't matter, right? But if you've cleared both the exams, you can earn the charter anytime. Or on the other hand, you're also free not to kind of be a charter holder. And you can clear both the exams. You can state that I've cleared both the exams, but you don't need the charter, so that's completely fine. Yes, Mohammed, the online method will have recorded sessions. Okay, so you will have access to all the class recordings right on the next day. Now, talking about the exam syllabus. So if you see, part 1 has 4 topics. So you have foundations of risk management and quantitative analysis. Now here, this is more about in general, how is or what is the idea behind risk management? What are the different type of risks? How do you measure them? Right? These are again foundational concepts. Then you have quantitative analysis. Quantitative analysis is very similar to what you study in level 1 and level 2 of CFA. So you study about statistics, you study about hypothesis testing, sampling, some stochastic. There is some concepts related to regression, linear regression, multiple regression, machine learning. So all these are discussed in quantitative analysis. These 2 topics have 40% weightage. Then we have financial markets and products. Now this topic is more on different products available. Here we speak a lot about derivative instruments, right? Then we also speak about a lot of special type of options, right? Like in CFA, you might have studied about plain vanilla call options and put options. Here we go one step further. We speak about knockout products. These are traded in European markets, in Singapore. Then we have different type of risk models and valuation. So how do you value derivative instruments? Black-Scholes model. All these are kind of covered here. Now, just to give you a slightly more detailed overview of this, I also have the entire study guide. So this 29-page document, I can share it with you after this. So if you see foundations of risk management, this is basically the first area. Here, what is discussed, right? Your CAPM, all these risk-adjusted performance measurements, Sharpe ratios, strain or measure, right? Multi-factor model, CAPM, all these gets discussed. We also talk about every chapter, right? So what are the different chapters that are there in this exam? Okay. Then we have quantitative analysis. This is basically the second area, which talks about again regression, correlation, time series modeling, simulation, all these things, probability, right? So a lot of these things which you have already studied in level 1 and level 2 of CFA. Then we have the third, again, every chapter is discussed here. Then you have the third area, which is financial markets and products. Now here, if you see, which talks about OTC derivatives, exchange traded derivatives, forwards, futures, swaps, mortgage-backed securities, interest rate products like FRAs, right? And again, the different chapters that are involved here. So like central clearing, these are completely new that you would not have covered. Different exotic options, something that have not been covered, right? So these are some new areas that you are definitely going to see. Then we have the fourth topic, which is valuation and risk models, right? This is basically where again we speak about VAR, expected shortfall, how do you value options, how do you actually do stress testing and scenario analysis, the regulatory capital requirements. This is very, very important for banks, right? So these are generally the models used at various banks. Okay. No. So Abdullah, there is nothing discussed related to financial statements. So do we speak about revenue and cost of goods sold accounting? Nothing, zero. Not even in part two. Okay. Yeah. Now talking about the topic areas in part two, it goes into individual risks, right? So there is market risk, 20% weightage, credit risk, again 20% weightage, operational risk, 20% weightage, liquidity risk, again for a bank, asset liability management, it's very important that if assets have, or if their liabilities have lower duration, their assets also ideally should have a similar duration. So again, that is where liquidity risk comes into picture. Then in general, risk management and investment management, this is very much similar to market risk, but yeah, the idea here is this is very much what you would study in CFA. Okay. And finally, every year you have this current issues in financial markets which keeps changing. Okay. So now in 2022, what do we have? Right, let me show it to you. And as you would expect, right, related to cryptocurrencies, related to artificial intelligence. So if you see in current issues in financial markets in 2022, we are talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and big data. We are talking about risk management implications of COVID-19. Now, this was something completely new. Then phasing out of LIBOR. Now, if you would know, starting from this year or so, we are not looking at LIBOR as a reference rate. So we are looking at other reference rate, like you have SOFR, SONA, all these reference rates. We discuss about this. Climate risk is discussed. We also speak about cyber risk and digital currencies, and this is where your cryptocurrencies are being discussed. Okay. Now this topic generally keeps changing, and it will always have a 10% weightage. It's that's been the trend. No, yeah. So Mohammed has a question. Do I need to be a member in the GAR? No, you need not be a member in the GAR. Okay. And the monthly subscription is not going to be 195. It's going to be yearly subscription. That is later on if you really want to be a member or not. But to give the exam, you really don't have to pay this fees. Okay. So if you see, the fees is also slightly on the lower side. So if I just directly show it to you from the GAR website, so GAR exam dates. So there's early registration is July 31st. Okay. Just a second. So if you see your FRM part 1 exam, now here, what matters for you is the November exam. The early registration is 31st of July. You have an enrollment fee. This is one time. You don't have to pay it again. And you have an exam fee. So if you register before 31st of July, the total fees for part 1 is $1,000. And if you are a returning candidate, you only pay 600. So if you are registering for part 1 and part 2, you need to pay $1,600 again. But I would say giving both the exams in one attempt starting right now is going to be very, very difficult. Okay. I have a few more questions that has come up. How many books for each topic? Yeah, so there is, again, it's if you see, it's like one single book for every topic. Now that is what GARP gives you. So you will have access to their online materials for part 1, right? Schwezer has 4 different, I think, one book for every topic. So Kaplan also provides, they provide one book for every topic. GARP, it's basically ebook for you. So it doesn't matter. It's just one single book or one single access that you have. Okay. So this is basically for part 2. For part 2, you just have the exam fees. Tabit, yes, Tabit, yes. Similar to CFA, we have a summary booklet even here. So the entire Schwezer access is there. So everything that we have. So just to show you, let me give you an example for this. So if I just go to Kaplan Learn, now this is where you would be going, right? As in, if you remember, you have a login ID and a password. Not this one. Just a second. Right, so for CFA, you would have logged into an LMS like this. Okay. So if I just log into this portal, you would have every product. So now I have access to level 1, FRM part 1 and part 2. So let's say for FRM part 1. Okay. So all these study tools would be available. The Schwezer notes are there. Quick sheet is there. On-demand classes are there. Review workshop is there. This is where you will get the passmate. Topic quizzes, checkpoint exams, right? So resource library. This entire thing that you have for CFA is something that you also have for FRM. Okay. Yeah. So we have to register ourselves. The institute won't. Yeah, we have. Yeah, you all have to register yourself. We can help. Kaplan can help you with this. Again, it's completely free, and the process is way more simpler. The process here would be way more simpler. All you need to do is create an account with GARP. Okay, as in right now, maybe in the next 5 minutes, you could do. Just say you are new to GARP and create an account, register for the exam. Within the next 5 minutes, you'll be able to book dates. In UAE itself, there are a lot of areas where, or a lot of centers where you can give the exam. I think there are 3 to 4 centers in Dubai, 2 centers, I guess, in Abu Dhabi. Okay. Yeah. Next, talking about the approach, again, it's very, in fact, exactly similar to the approach that you would have experienced for CFA. That is, there are sessions which help you prepare for the exam. Then towards the end, there is revision sessions. In revision sessions, we have a passmate. These sessions, by the way, are much shorter. By okay, CFA, these are 120-hour sessions, and there is again a 50-hour revision. Here, because the entire exam is more niche, right, more directed towards risk management, right, what we have is classroom and face-to-face programs, which are close to 75 hours. So there are 60 hours of classes and 15 hours of revision. In the 60 hours of classes, we cover all the 4 topics, and then in the 15 hours of revision, this is where we provide you with the passmate, and we cover the entire curriculum in 2 days of revision or 4 half days. Okay. So this is basically how we do classroom sessions. Face-to-face sessions are exactly same. Sorry, live online sessions are exactly same. There is absolutely no difference. The classroom sessions are live streamed. Okay. So right now, what you are experiencing is a live online session. And if there is a student sitting right in front of me, that student is having a face-to-face session or a classroom session. So the classroom sessions are going to be recorded. They are also going to be live streamed. Exactly like this. This is the experience that you will have in the class. Okay. Now, I have a question from Abdullah. The exam dates are November 5 to November 18. So is it daily? No, it's basically you just select a date, whichever is your lucky date. Yeah. So if November 14 it is or November 17, that's it. You just select a date when you want to give the exam, and on that day you will have to give the exam. Okay. So we have classroom sessions, live online sessions, study materials. Now all these study materials would be provided, right? So they all will have access to the Schwezer notes, so the hard copy of the Schwezer notes. And in case you don't want to purchase the materials, what you could do is just have the online access. Okay, a quick sheet would be provided. This is basically a summary sheet having all the formulas. Practice exams would be there. You have already seen the practice exam in the portal here. Okay, so here you will have all your module quizzes, mock exams. So there are 2 mock exams. Then you also have the Q bank. So individual topic wise Q bank access you'll have. You give a study calendar and the online resource library, right? So this is basically your entire online resource library that you will have access to. You also have some access to on-demand classes, but again, they are very, very fast, and learning from that would not be very efficient for your exam. Then in general, how is this entire experience uh, given to you in terms of how is it kind of delivered? We said there's live online classes, face-to-face classes. After that, there is also access to LMS portal, right? Again, some of you would have seen this. So this is basically a portal provided by Kaplan Professional Middle East, right? You all will have access to an FRM course. Okay, again, so here, because I've logged in as a trainer, that's why, but here you will have access to this. You will be able to see the entire course, recording, class notes, everything would be here. Yeah, so do you want to see a sample question? Sure. So sample question would look like this. Let's take topic quizzes, financial markets and products. Okay, let me just launch it. Right, so something like, now this is related to credit risk. Okay, so a level payment, fixed rate mortgage has the following characteristics. What is the monthly payment? Right, this is very similar to time value of money concepts. You have Texas BA2 plus calculator, using which you'll be able to calculate. Then again, these are very similar to a question on, again, one second, take a short position. Again, these are related to derivative positions. Okay, then okay, these are option trading strategies. This is something that students learn in level 3. In level 3 options, you have option trading strategies, right, where we speak about bull call spread, bear put spread, and all of these. So here it's all about what are the different strategies, profits. And again, one small difference from level CFA exams would be, here there are 4 options. CFA there are 3 options, here there are 4. So see, these are the style of questions, very, very similar to, as in the style of questions, if you see, are very similar to CFA in terms of analytical. None of these are straightforward. You'll have to think through these questions. Okay, and you will also have access to GARP materials for part 1. For part 2, you have to additionally buy it. For part 1, as a part of your registration, you will have access to the GARP materials. Okay, now what is the kind of candidate support that we provide? You will have a WhatsApp group. You will be able to directly communicate with the trainers here. You'll have any issues, any questions, you all are you're completely free to reach out through the WhatsApp group. If you have a lot of doubts, you can also come into the office and ask any question that you'll have. Okay, who are the trainers? So here in this we have, so I train for FRM. I have cleared the exam, but then I have not taken the FRM charter. But then, yeah, that is something that I'll be doing. There is Yasser. He is based in Canada right now, but then he visits Dubai frequently, and online sessions are taken by Yasser. So he takes a lot of FRM sessions at corporates. Bilal also takes few sessions on the product side. Okay, so these are our trainers. Most of them you would have already met in the CFA sessions, or in case you are completely new to Kaplan. These are not, by the way, the only 3 trainers who teach FRM. We also have few other trainers. So there's a trainer called as Ganesh, who's a well-known FRM trainer. Then we have a trainer called as Shiv. But yeah, predominantly it would be 2 of us, right? Me, Yasir. In fact, 3 of us: me, Yasir, and Ganesh Nayak. Okay, and we've been doing FRM trainings also for few corporates, right? And then now these are not the corporates for which we do just FRM training. Yeah, these are corporates for which we do a lot of different trainings. But yeah, of which I can say, yeah, we've done FRM trainings for Saudi Aramco. We've done FRM trainings for SNB, Saudi National Bank, Samba, right? So there are few corporates for whom we have trained, and we also have the data, by the way, for FRM in this region. So the biggest market for FRM, as in the most students are from UAE. Second biggest market is Saudi. So UAE and Saudi is the biggest market for FRM candidates in the Middle Eastern region. Globally, it is China, followed by US and India, right? And UAE is among the fastest growing markets along with India. So this is growing at almost 20% rate on a year-on-year basis. Okay, so that's about the exam, about Kaplan, the trainers, right? In case you want to reach out further through emails, I've put my emails here. Sandy is here. Sandy, if you could put your email here, that would be very, very helpful, or your email and number on the chat box. Okay. Yes, Thabit, I have the timetable. I can get it sent to you. So I'll ask, and in fact, the timetable will be shared with all of you. And all of you who have attended the program, the timetable would be sent to you tomorrow itself. And so the sessions are going to be in the evening. It's going to be on weekdays, in the weekdays evening. Okay, yeah, so you can see Gada has given the email ID of Sandy. So she can definitely help you with anything related to sales or anything related to the program start dates and the schedule. In addition to that, yeah, y'all are going to get email tomorrow with the schedule and the topics that are going to be covered. That is this file, which covers all the topics that are there. Okay. In addition to that, Gada has also given her own email ID here. So you can also reach out to her. So Gada is the head of business development for us on the exam prep side. So you can also reach out to her for inquiries related to not just FRM, but maybe CFA, FRM, ACCA, CMA, and all these programs that we do at Kaplan. Yeah, what are the employment trends you see post FRM? Yeah, so most of these Zoya I've seen working in banks. Now this region also has some major banks, and most of these FRM charter holders have got employed by banks. Few at sovereign wealth funds, but yeah, at sovereign wealth funds still I would see the demand is more for CFA. But yeah, ADCB, Emirates NBD, FAB is actually a very big employer of FRM. So yeah, these are the kind of employers who are hiring FRM charter holders. And even if you have cleared part 1, that's also enough. As in, even post part 1, people are getting jobs. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Gada, for also sharing the number. Thank you very much. Yeah. So any questions on anything that we've discussed or any more clarity needed? I've, by the way, shared my own email ID and number also. I'll also put it here again in the chat box. And Now, right now, for the next few days, I am not in UAE, so my number might not be available, but I'm still available on my email, or this number is there on WhatsApp. So in case you want to communicate on WhatsApp, you can definitely use this number, but calling might not be available for till 4th of August. Okay, perfect. So thank you very much. I see a lot of questions asked, and I really hope all these questions were covered and we've got the answers for all the questions that you all asked. In addition to that, also, any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, yeah, thank you, Thabit. Thank you, Meghna. Thank you, Abdul Rahim. And glad that it was helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gada. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing your numbers, and thank you for all the support. Yeah, thank you, Donato. Thank you.